Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Long before the young earth creationist movement got going and staked out the territory of the shape of the theological impossible, there were other contentious issues. That is to say, people had been finding bones that looked quite odd for, well, hundreds, if not thousands of years. And during the European dalliance with intransigency, being stubborn, when these bones were brought forward, people would say, it must have been animals killed in the flood. Okay, so far it's not such a big issue. But then they found bones that looked completely unlike any animal they had ever seen. They said, well, must be an animal killed from some other parts of the world, and during the flood it washed up here. Because you know what kind of weird animals they've got in Africa and Asia, all of that. They hadn't even met Australia yet, but that would have been in part of the weird animal category. But as they began to explore and come into contact with the actual people and animals of Africa, Asia, and elsewhere, they began to realize that no, there were no animals that looked like these. I mean, yes, elephants are big, but look at this leg bone. This wouldn't fit in the longest, tallest elephant you could. How many tail sections did this thing need? And people began to hypothesize. They said, well, maybe these animals no longer exist. And that's why we can't find living examples of them. Perfectly normal explanation. Most of us would be perfectly fine with that. We've even got a word for it. The animal has gone extinct. And if you're thinking that, you are a heretic condemned to hell. This was the response to the novel idea that maybe some of these weird bones or fossils that were found that looked like even stranger creatures were from extinct animals. That was met with the charge of heresy. Passionate heresy. Why? Because to imagine that one of God's perfect creation had gone away was simply unthinkable. When God made the world as it was. And when God put all those animals on it, God put the animals on there presumably because they had a reason to be there. And to get rid of them, so the claim went, well, that would be unthinkable. Why would God make animals that he would then get rid of? They weren't necessarily evil. If God wanted them as part of the creation, then they would stay as part of the creation, and to imagine that they had gone extinct was to disrupt the concept of God's perfect, unchanging, and unchangeable creation. This was not such a big deal in the Jewish world. That is to say, you did not find rabbis banging the table in shul and saying, if you imagine an animal ever went extinct, then you are a heretic. No, maybe. Yeah, maybe there were things. We don't have a lot of evidence yet. It's only the 16, 17, 1800s. What do we know? But is it possible? Sure, it's possible. Maybe the world is older than we thought. That's also possible. That whole 7 days of creation, we said for a few thousand years, we're not 24-hour days. We were cool with all of that. But there's another reason specifically regarding the extinction that we had no reason to doubt that it was possible. It's because we had learned our own history about what is possible and what is impossible. You see, we are about to commemorate Tisha B'Av, starting Saturday night and Sunday, 9 p.m., 9 a.m. And this is commemorating the great destructions and disasters of our people that happened on this day. And the one that really got the day going, there were a few prior to this, but really got the day going, was the destruction of the first temple of Jerusalem, the one that had been built by Solomon. Well, in the waning years of the first temple time, there was a prophet named Jeremiah. And Jeremiah pounded the table and called people heretics because they were corrupt and they were creating great injustices against each other. They were heretics in that respect. And told them that God is going to destroy Jerusalem. God will destroy the temple. And the people of his generation threw him in jail. How dare he say something so blasphemous? Doesn't he realize this is God's temple? Do you think God is going to destroy God's own temple? Whatever else happens, whatever our sins might be, God's not going to destroy the temple. That is impossible. There is no way in God's plan that the temple could be made to lie in ruins. So, you are clearly a blasphemer. You were clearly a heretic, or at least unpatriotic, Jeremiah, and so they threw him in jail. Turns out Jeremiah was right. That as a matter of fact, God was perfectly fine letting the temple be destroyed if, at the moment, it was only being used for a corrupt version of Judaism and as a way to paper over the crimes that the people were committing, imagining that somehow they were receiving expiation by the sacrifices while they were continuing to rob, murder, and destroy each other within their own country. No, God didn't care. It's not like God lived there, right? It's not God's box. It's not as though if the temple gets destroyed, God is suddenly homeless. God is bigger than all of that by every possible measure. And the prophets have been saying that for centuries. But it was inconceivable to the people of Israel that God would actually allow Jerusalem and the temple to be destroyed. And because they couldn't conceive of it, they felt there was no reason to change. Likewise, the people who believed that extinction was inconceivable, when they were told, you know, all of those carrier pigeons, all those dodos, all these other species that are jeopardized, they could be extinct, they were told that that was impossible. Humanity couldn't actually damage God's perfect creation. God would never allow one of his wonderful, blessed animals to be removed from this world. I mean, that's as crazy as thinking that humans could change the weather. So, if it's inconceivable, why bother changing? If it's inconceivable, then even talking about it is unnecessarily alarmist. But as Jews, we know that what we had thought was inconceivable was far too easy to come to reality. And so when someone raises an alarm and says, you know, those animals might go extinct if we continue to hunt them, destroy their habitat, or create other pressures upon them, we say, you know what, that could happen. When people say, you know, anthropogenic climate change, this seems like a real thing. You can sort of measure the impact of humanity and see the changing weather patterns. That's probably a problem. And we can't just say, God will fix it. God's not going to save the last dodo. God's not going to save the last glacier. We are. That's what we learned from all of the destruction that we have faced, is that nothing is inconceivable, that we are capable of incredible things, terrible and amazing. And it is up to us to choose to do the amazing and to defend against the terrible, and to not rely upon some mistaken piety that this world will somehow be able to endure beyond our destructive activities. It's true only in the most basic sense that, yes, I do have faith that the world will endure in one form or another, but I don't believe that that form is guaranteed to be comfortable, hospitable, or peaceful. That is up to us. It is why God gave us Torah. It is why God gave us a mind. It is why God gave us a conscience. We must be able to conceive of the worst if we are going to work for the best. Shabbat Shalom.